Welcome to our in-depth mindset question for today. How are you? What is happening in your life? Welcome to class. We have a very interesting topic. I know that a lot of you resonate with this particular one because maybe it's something you've been through, you're currently going through, and it is around identity crisis. And it is the number one reason that you are having an identity crisis. And we're going to cover that today. So welcome to our short, sharp, in-depth question. And so today we're going to cover 2 points. So I'm going to keep it nice and short, and well, we'll see how short it is. And it's the first, we're going to look at the shadow self, or the shadow of self, because that's an important part when it comes to identity crisis, that really we feel like, in a way, living in the shadows. And then we're going to cover the number one reason for identity crisis. So then we've got a resource here for you as well. So if you would love the resource and you'd love to get a hold of that and actually apply the work, today all you need to do is comment below with self, or if you're watching the replay, it is in the download inside of Maximum Growth Academy. And you just have to comment self and we'll get the download to you. If you're watching this as a replay, comment replay. Anytime you have some inspiration or some thoughts or even a question, feel free to also put it in the comments below. Okay, so first of all, let's look at the identity crisis and what that actually means. So really, it's about having a fractured sense of self. You don't feel like a whole self or your true self. It's like, I like to see it as like a mirror, and you had a mirror of yourself and it was one whole piece, and instead it feels like it's been fractured into a million different pieces. And you're not really sure who you are. You kind of bend and morph to the outside world. And depend on who you're around. And there's a sense of hollowness or emptiness inside, or a lot of internal noise as a result. And so what I love about identity crises is that it gives you a profound opportunity to do some deep introspection and some inquiry and your inner work. And so sometimes we can sit in our stuff and we can be deeply challenged by it, or we can also see it as an opportunity and appreciate it as an opportunity for self-discovery. And so it's essentially the question within an identity crisis, the question of who am I? One of the questions that we've asked for a very long time, like, who actually am I? And I think sometimes that we can go through like these evolutions of who we are. Like, who we are is definitely who I was when I was in my 20s, definitely not who I am now. Who I am as a mom is not who I used to be just as a single person. So we go through these evolutions when you're going through births, deaths, and marriages. That's a new evolution of who you are. So we're continually evolving our sense of who we are. But it's the point where we feel like it's not like we're discovering who we are, we've lost who we are. And that's the point where we perceive ourselves to go through an identity crisis. And this actually would be if the 15 years I've been coaching people, this would be the part and the point in people's lives where they really lean into the work the most, but also struggle the most as well, because they're really stuck in the fractures of who they are and not being able to see the whole picture of who they are. So there's a lot of experiences and feelings that people have. They're big feelings that people have in these particular moments. And so what's really interesting though is we want to choose a pathway to healing our whole self. And that's what I particularly love about the application of the Demartini method, which is why we show up for a class with you each and every week consistently throughout the entire year, is because it gives you that opportunity to do that deep introspection healing and feel like it brings all of the parts of you back into yourself. But it takes work, and sometimes at periods of time it takes a lot of work. It's like, but it's like something someone said just recently in one of our classes. It's like brushing your teeth. You don't question to brush your teeth in the morning. We want to have the same experience when it comes to our mindset work. It's just it's non-negotiable. It's like, you don't consider, well, today I don't really feel like brushing your teeth. You just do it anyway. So it will be like that. Or don't feel like drinking water, but you do it anyway. And so it takes showing up. Not only because showing up is also that beautiful reflection when we're stuck in our and lost in our identity and we don't know who we are, we're actually not even showing up for ourselves. So taking that step to just show up for a class, for example, if you come into our maximum growth classes each and every week, showing up there, which means you're showing up for you, which over time, as you keep on continuing to show up, continue to show up for you, you'll actually get a deeper appreciation of who you are. So we also want to do, I want you to kind of imagine like, not like an onion, like it's going to make you cry, but it's like peeling back the layers. And those layers are the conditioning that we have around ourselves and our sense of self. And that might be maybe like societal pressure of like who you think you need to be. Maybe it's our past experiences that we've gone and we're struggling with. Maybe you've gone through trauma. And then because of that perception, it's fragmented who you are. And so what we have to remember is the journey to self-discovery and to know our identity is not a linear progress. It doesn't work like that. I still remember periods of time in my journey that I've had, it feels like not just like 2 steps backwards, but it feels like 1,000 step backwards, and it's like I'm just re-triggered. But what we want to understand is sometimes when we do our healing journey, we heal things on the surface and then we go deeper and we go deeper. And as we do that and we heal the deeper layers, we're actually healing our identity as well as we do that. I definitely know that it is worth it. Like when you do get to what feels like the other side and you get to that point where you actually feel, I know who I am now, like I'm solid in who I am, which means that you're not wavering to what's happening on the outside world, and you have a solid sense of self that you can turn around and say it's been worth all the time, energy, money that you've invested in that journey and that experience. And so you're here, I believe right now, listening to this and still hanging out in this in-depth question is because maybe a part of this rings true for you. So what I want you to know is that you can establish a true sense of self. And we want to understand what essentially the number one reason is, like, why do you go through an identity crisis? Because when you can understand that, we will have a deeper appreciation to kind of where you're at and also a pathway to where to move forward. So I want you to imagine, so we're going to look at the shadow self first. And then, so if we look at the shadow self and we look at what our true self is, imagine our true self is like the light that shines down from our soul or from straight down into us. And that is our true shiny self. And you can definitely see that in some people, especially when you see someone who is going through a lot of trauma or really emotionally triggered. I can see it in their eyes because they almost lose their spark. I don't know if you've seen it before or you've recognized it in yourself. And then there's other times you can speak to someone or see them and you're like, wow, they got so much light shining out of their eyes. And so the eyes is definitely a great indicator of kind of where you're at emotionally because of the light that shines through. And so when it comes to then our shadow self or our shadow, when we hide in the shadows, we're essentially hiding aspects of ourself and our true identity. It's like we essentially want to conceal ourselves from the outside world. And so when we do that, we want to think about what's the driver behind that. And shame is definitely one of those like little like things that happen or experiences that we have happen that we perceive shame, and then that wants to hide us away from the world. If we then have a desire to conform to what is norm, then we can also be in that we're hiding from ourselves because we're choosing to fit into the bigger picture of what everyone else is doing and hide our true self. So hiding is definitely a great feedback to let us know whether we're being our true selves or not, because to the degree that you hide is the degree that you're also hiding your true self from the outside world as well. And so these behaviors, when we look at hiding and we look at not being our true self, it can show up in lots of different reasons or lots of different ways. So that can be like hiding information. It can be hiding away from the world. It can be not attending events or experiences. It can just be saying no more often. But you feel like a sense of shrinking, and you'll know it when you're there because you're like, you definitely know you could be more out, but you're not. And so there is a whole reason why people hide. And I wouldn't want to say it's just from shame, but it definitely is a big factor. What we do want to know is we want to know what are the signs, because essentially every time we like hide away from the world and every time we want to hide away from ourselves, we're essentially rejecting a part of ourselves. So that's what we're doing. We're not accepting, or we're not appreciating who we are. But like, no, I don't like that part of you, and I don't like that version of you. So I'm just going to hide away, or I'm going to do this. And so we want to know, like, what are then essentially the reasons why you would be rejecting yourself? Like, why would you be wanting to put yourself down and not put yourself out there in the world? And so there can be a whole, everyone's very different. So maybe this will resonate with you, maybe it won't, but it'll be like maybe potentially self-criticism, like judgy of yourself for the things you have and haven't done. It can be seeking external validation, where the outside world, you want everyone to be okay with you, or not, you struggle with rejection in a way. Maybe it is the fear of actually just being authentic, like actually going and speaking your mind, or actually going and sharing your thoughts. And just that in itself can be like heart palpitations and having fear around it. We can also do something which is called over identification. So this is where we lose a sense of self because we actually mirror and adapt to the people around us. Don't know if that, we might also call that not codependence, but codependence or enmeshment is probably the best word for it, where we lose a sense of self because we're so like ingrained or mirroring other people around us that and do their behaviors, we end up disconnecting for ourselves. We talked about boundaries last week, so hopefully you love that session. If you haven't, go have a look at that. And it's no more yeses. And it's like that lack of boundary, we can lose a sense of self because all of a sudden, and we're also rejecting ourselves because we're taking in and doing what everyone else wants to do, and we are ignoring ourselves. It's like, I'm not even going to listen. I'm just going to do what everyone else wants me to do. We can also lose a sense of self when we have that comparison. Comparison is a bitch, it really is. Like, it's just such a thing where if the more we compare ourselves to other people, or the more we then think we need to be like them, we lose our sense of identity and our sense of self as well. So there are some reasons why then we might be rejecting or hiding our true sense of self. So maybe some of them resonate with you. I definitely can put my hand up and say that was me a lot more pre-2009, where I felt a lot of the time hiding away from the world, just feeling broken and feeling unlovable and feeling a lot of shame within me that led me to hide and have panic attacks and anxiety around social events. And so maybe if that also, or the shame side or hiding away also resonates with you, feel free to comment below. And it's definitely taken a lot of work. So I'll tell you the number one reason then, and the number one reason you're having an identity crisis. So the number one, I'm going to keep it super simple, and it is that you succumb to the shadows of conformity, which is basically meaning that you bow to external pressures. Because when you're your true self, you're not thinking about what is everyone else doing, what's happening in the outside world. You're very solid, and it feels very solid and congruent in your inner world. It's that you get wobbly on the outside world, but what we want to do is build that strength in the inside world. And so if we talk about subordination, so essentially that's what it is. So subordination is where you perceive an authority figure, or you perceive external expectations or pressures or society's norms of what you think you should do. And you lose your sense of authenticity, you lose your sense of self, because you're opting for that worldview or that way of life or that individual and living according to them instead of you. And so what we wanted to be able to do is we want to understand or acknowledge when we go into this identity and loss of self, like what's actually happening. So I'm just going to share with you, and it's my screen, because I'm getting a little bit more tech savvy here. Hey, so I just want to share this because this is part of your download. And so I just want you to imagine this right now. So you've got this download, you can print it out. And I want you to imagine everything that you feel like is a true sense of self and solid sense of self. We want to put that inside of the circle. So these are, for me, for example, my purpose and what I do, I'm coaching. I'm definitely going to put it inside of the circle because that feels like solid, congruent. It's consistent. Been doing it for over a decade and a half, actually kind of longer because I studied before that. So let's say like 18, 19 years. Of just dedicated to that one thing. And actually, if I go just to the dedication of self and understanding self, I can go way before that. So yeah, a long time before that. So we want to put whatever you perceive. You can do traits, actions, and inactions. You can do experiences you've had. You can have people that you hang around with. But we want to find and formulate what is your sense of self? Like, where do you have your sense of self? What experiences have you had that you felt like your sense of self has been awoken? Or where do you feel really solid within yourself? You want to put all of that inside. Then we want to know the outside wobbles of the world. Like, where do you wobble? Maybe it is, I know for some people that they hang around particular individuals and then they end up doing things that they don't necessarily want to do, taking drugs, drinking, that experience. So maybe put that in the outside world, in the outside of the circle. Then we might have other aspects which might be around particular individuals that we feel like we end up subordinating and minimizing, not speaking up, not sharing our truth, and we can put those there. We can also have behavior traits, actions, and inactions that we feel like actually that's not really feeling like in alignment with who I truly want to be. Yes, we have all traits, actions, and inactions. That's true. But let's say there's some traits, actions, and inactions that might be emotionally charged that you might want to consider working on, because essentially what we're doing is building on the outside of the circle all the things that we want to work on and chip away at, because these are all the things that wobble us. And what we want to do is dissolve these emotional charges that we have, set a plan to do that. And so then there's more things on the inside that build our sense of self. And then we dissolve the things so it becomes less on the outside. So download, if you want to have that, you just have to jump in and hit self, and we will get that. If you're watching the replay, it is in the download for you. So I would suggest to do that because it's hard for us to really understand, and we want to reflect on our identity and our sense of self. And we want to reflect, what is it specifically about my identity that I am feeling congruent and which is incongruent? What do I feel like is my true self, and where do I feel disconnected? Where do I have resonance, and where am I having disresonance? Is that a word? I don't know. Anyway, so what we want to do is, as we build this picture, the outside, we're going to start applying the Demartini method or whatever it is that you utilize to dissolve and resolve your emotional charges. That's what we do here at Maximum Growth each and every week. And so we're at the moment in our process of doing family. And so I'm sure there's going to be some people on the outside that make you wobble a little bit with family. And we want to work through those emotional charges. And as you do, and the byproduct. So it's not that we directly work on self and identity. It's not something we directly do, but we work on the charges that we have around it. And as a byproduct and result, you'll get more clear and congruent with who you are. So I hope that you have loved this in-depth question today. I hope you're loving these series altogether. Love to hear your thoughts, your insights, your realizations. Feel free to share. Let's start a conversation in the chat below. And I look forward to seeing you at the next perfect time.